Greetings and welcome, or hopefully welcome back. Before we begin, let me take a few moments to give the obligatory like, comment, and subscribe, and more importantly, share. Share it with a friend, an alien, or just those people on the ISS. Let's try and get this channel past 1,000 subscribers. We are almost there. And while you're busy trying to build a radio telescope to call space, be sure and check out my Patreon channel. Consider becoming a subscriber and help keep Gregor energized with pizza and beer. Seriously, Gregor's half the magic here, so let's give him some love. The links are in the video description and in the page description on both YouTube and Rumble. And lastly, a quick shout out to my Tier 3 and 4 patrons: Russ of the Frozen North, Neo5AC, Nick, Zachary Langmead, Scared Wolf 1206, and Zachery Raney. Thank you very much. And now, on with the story. The Deathworlders, a story by Philip R. Johnson, a.k.a. Hambone, Hambone HFY, and Hambone 3110. Chapter 27, Playing with Fire, Part 3. Date point, 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 5 days AV. Planet Perfection, the Core Worlds. 11.
You're human.
Cool, you see what's straight in front of I. Dredd was smiling. 11 had to dig into the hierarchy database to reference human facial expressions, and decided that what she was seeing wasn't a smile at all, but was instead tagged with the term rictus. It was not, apparently, a friendly expression. It certainly didn't look like one. Quite aside from that hateful glare, she could see sharp slicing teeth and 4 pointed grabbing ones, and her host's body instincts were sending urgent messages to the effect that she should tremble. Humiliating as it was, breaking character was not acceptable, so 11 allowed Mororic's body to tremble and even cower a bit and back away.
But you're supposed to be Chinasho.
Aye, and I don't want Babylon come calling, sight? Either the translator had made a complete hash of his language, or else he was speaking pure nonsense.
What?
Dredd's expression got even angrier somehow, and he spoke clearly and slowly, as if enunciating for an idiot. If they, he waved a hand at the planet in general, find out a human is here, then they either kill me or hunters will come.
Then why?
You out me, you die, seen? His tone was completely unmalicious, meaning that his words weren't so much of a threat as an alert of future danger to be avoided, like a warning sign on a crumbling cliff edge. 11 was not going to be bullied by a Deathworld primitive. In any case, Deathworlders outside the quarantine field were not to be permitted, a rule she could have bent or broken if she wanted, but she didn't want to. Internally, she sent a priority alert to planetary security. Externally, she squeaked a terrified,
Understood.
"Why I chasing Sanctuary?" Dredd asked.
That was the job?
11 told him.
The client wanted found. When we found him, we came straight here.
Dredd didn't need to know that the client in question had been the hierarchy. And he taken over this station?
Yes.
Were there humans with him?
I don't know. We chased the wrong escape pod first. That one had 3 humans in it, a male and 2 females.
His hands shot out so fast that even at 11's accelerated processing speeds, Mororic's reflexes and sensory acuity weren't adequate to the task of seeing it happen. In an eye blink, he was holding her firmly by one of her belts. The fabric creaked as he hauled her closer, so close that the scent of him filled her nose. He even smelled angry. Where? When?
Deep space,
11 answered.
Their pod was heading for the space lanes between Allied Vigort kingdoms and Domain Space, not far from Freeport 87. That was about 2 months ago. They would definitely have reached the lanes by now and had been detected.
Then what?
That depends on who found them. Most ships wouldn't knowingly take a human on board, and they were in no condition to fight. The pod's medical scanner was reporting that all 3 were badly hurt.
The news seemed to enrage and disgust him. He let go of her harnesses and spun away. He took a deep breath and let out with a frustrated vocalization before turning back and facing her. "What does that mean?" he asked firmly.
It means most shipmasters would have just left them. Gowans probably wouldn't, but that's a long ways from Gowan space, and if the hunters found them first...
She trailed off. His glare was only getting worse.
It means that they're most likely either dead or still out there,
she summarized. Dread's nostrils flared, and the line of hair above his right eye creased downwards. She thought he was about to snap something, but instead he exhaled while making a coarse noise in the back of his throat and changed the subject. "Why is that station so important?"
It has a fully industrial nanofactory,
11 told him.
And Akenziktik is an ally of your species, which means he's probably planning to use it for your benefit.
So?
So that is very illegal for several reasons.
So?
Oh, you should care,
11 told him.
Your species is only just in their post-contact stage. Your economy couldn't possibly absorb the introduction of even one functioning Kurambora nanofactory. It would be catastrophic for you. Your entire manufacturing sector would become obsolete too quickly for your economy to adjust. Millions would be redundant, unemployed, starving.
That bad?
It happened before. Have you ever met a Nuex?
He shook his head, a gesture she took for a reply in the negative.
They're a reclusive species with a tiny population, and they don't leave their homeworld much, if at all. About 200 years ago, they got their hands on nanofactory technology before they were ready, and it resulted in global economic collapse, which in turn led to mass starvation, plagues, rioting, and internecine warfare. Even with all this time to recover, their population is still less than half of what it was before the crisis.
For the time being, he betrayed an emotion other than simmering rage. He put a hand on his jaw and rubbed thoughtfully, then ran that hand over the thick, matted ropes of hair that ran down his back. He turned away, paced thoughtfully, then took out his communicator. "Not done with it yet," he snarled. "Stay right there." 11 watched the data traffic and had to suppress her emotional connection to her host, or else she would have indicated triumph as she realized he first researched the Nuexian crisis to verify what she had told him, and then he immediately called his client, Shipmaster Meffer, host to 53. He spoke slowly and carefully, disguising the unique cadences and idioms of what was clearly his native and preferred mode of speech, and reported everything, especially the nanofactory. With plausible deniability for the information reaching the Fleet Master now established, Levin's work on perfection was now done. There was only the matter of a rogue human to clean up. Fortunately, that problem was about to solve itself. "Right," Deadlock pocketed his communicator. "Now, Sanctuary. I want to know everything." He trailed off, cocking his head at some sound that 11 hadn't detected. He gave her a suspicious glare and then stepped twice to his side. In the quiet of the storeroom, 11 finally heard some kind of metallic, springy sort of sound that punctuated each of his footsteps. Two cops burst into the room with their stun weaponry drawn and ready, and all hell broke loose. Berserkian electrical discharge weaponry had earned a large market share over the years. While they lacked the range, accuracy, and rate of fire of kinetic pulse weaponry, they more than made up for those deficiencies in effectiveness. Berserk stun guns had been credited not only with subduing human fugitives, but also in fighting back against hunter parties that had come looking for those humans. Dread didn't stand a chance. Not that mere insurmountable odds were likely to give any self-respecting Deathworlder pause for thought. The police, to Vizcatic, needed a moment to realize that Dread was not in the middle of the room, but lurking beside the door, and then it was already too late. 11 wasn't sure what she had been expecting from him, but the humans seemed to have absolutely no compunctions about violence. The first officer through the door didn't even have time to order him to surrender before Dread lashed out with enough force to pulp the poor creature's forearm. It collapsed, shrieking like some kind of malfunctioning industrial machine and cradling its ruined limb. The second fared no better. It tried to shoot at Dread, but the human flung himself to the ground, then used the interval as the cop's gun was recharging its capacitors to shoot again to launch himself forwards. He crashed into the Vizcatic officer's legs and broke 3 of them. The officer crashed to the ground screaming. 11 ran. She flinched as a stun gun shot that would have fried her host outright missed by a hand's width the second she burst through the door. There were 5 more security officers in the alleyway who beckoned urgently for her to get out of the way and aimed at the door again. What came through it wasn't Dread, but the billow of black cloth was convincing enough for all of them to fire at once. Dread had removed his robes and thrown them out the door in front of him. The garment ignited and fell to the ground burning, but Dread was right behind it and pounced over the flaming cloth. 11 had just enough time to solve the mystery of his 2 long Chinasho-like legs. Under his robe, Dread was wearing a pair of shorts, a few holsters and harnesses, and a pair of boots with some kind of cantilevered assemblage of springs and metal that elongated his stride, made him taller, and created the appearance of having digitigrade feet. They also, it seemed, gave him a mechanical advantage. 11 had the data on how agile humans were in standard gravity, but Dread's leap was enormous, even by their standards, and when he landed, he did so by crashing shoulder first into the middle officer. The unfortunate being went sprawling, grievously wounded, if not fatally so, and the other 4 found themselves within arm's reach of a Deathworlder in a fighting rage. 11 was pretty sure that he'd killed 2 of them outright. Dread's right hand was a knobbled club of gravity-forged dense bones and flesh, and it lashed out faster than the eye could follow. One of the officers staggered back and fell with his head lolling unnaturally, and another collapsed with a visible dent mid-forehead that didn't look remotely survivable. When Dread grabbed the 3rd and levered her into the 4th, he did so with enough force to almost tear her arm off, and left both of the officers creaking their agony in a disjointed pile of broken limbs on the deck. Oh well. In his rage, the human had now undoubtedly sparked a citywide hunt for himself that would inevitably lead to his capture. 11's work was done. She turned and sprinted away, preemptively shutting down the pain signals from a borrowed body. Sure enough, he caught her. With those spring boots on his feet, he could take huge, bouncing strides in low gravity, and 11 was smashed to the deck in only 5 paces. In an abstract way, she sensed 3 of Mawerki's legs break, an injury that once upon a time would have been slowly and agonizingly fatal, and which the very best of modern Kurumbara medicine still treated by preference with amputation and prosthesis. She was roughly shoved over and was now nose to nose with a violently enraged human. "Blood clot if you call Babylon, huh?" he snarled incomprehensibly. 11 followed the script provided by Murmurk's latent personality image.
Not me. Somebody must have seen.
"Shut up. I got tree eye. Want to live with 2? He tugged a knife. Not a fusion blade, just an ordinary bit of sharp metal. Not that it would really matter to Murmurk's flesh, not with the Deathworlder's strength behind it, from his belt, and aimed it levelly at 11's middle eye. Oh dear. 11 didn't really want to have to endure that fate, and she sensed that now she could plausibly pass off her departure as Murmurk's having died of sheer fright. She ejected from her host and triggered the kill subroutines in the implants as she evacuated them. Crushed and already dying beneath Dread's anger, the body of the already late Murmurk spasmed, frothed at the mouth, and finally died. 11 reconnected to the first host that presented itself, a nearby Governor Agavendrigan who was being held back by the security cordon, and checked the feed from the Kriwit drone. She watched Dread take out his rage on the corpse of her late host, dismembering it in a few moments of pure animal violence. Then, snarling, he stood, looked around him, and took off at a run. 11 set the Kriwit to follow, but it immediately became apparent that Dread was far too fast for the little urban creature to keep up. She lost sight of him as he leaned into the turn around a sharp corner far ahead, and by the time her biodrone had reached that corner itself, he was gone. Police vehicles thrummed overhead with their lights and sirens going full blast, and she reassured herself that his capture was only a matter of time. She fed the Governor Egg host a false memory of becoming lost in thought and dismounted gently. Her brief occupation would be overlooked as a moment of distraction, far better for creating less attention than having the giant creature suddenly keel over dead in the crowd. Satisfied, she slipped away into the hierarchy network and began to compose her mission report. It had, she considered, gone perfectly. Date point: 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 5 days AV. HMS Violent. Perfection System, The Core Worlds. Commodore William Caruthers. Caruthers confessed to being a Star Trek fan, but something that had always struck him as amusing and odd about the franchise was just how much personal space all the characters enjoyed aboard their ships. Ensigns and lieutenants were blessed with decent-sized apartments, usually with luxurious double beds and enough room to invite friends over for poker. In reality, one of the great perks of being a senior officer was that you got a small cabin to yourself that was just about large enough to contain a bed, a sink, and a desk. Caruthers' was about half the size of Captain Picard's ready room, let alone the opulent quarters in which that fictional character had luxuriated. Meanwhile, there were junior officers on Violent and somewhere in the fleet who were sharing bunks. That was the nature of life in the Navy, and if the officers were sharing bunks, then the ratings had an even more cramped and intimate time of it. Indeed, the cots and camp beds that the SOR techs kept in Caledonia's starboard bay were widely reckoned to be the most luxurious sleeping arrangements in the fleet, and were thus the source of some mildly envious friction. The cabin was important, though. It allowed him to sleep, and sleep he did at every opportunity. It might have been nice to unwind with a book first or something, but each time he had a chance to get his head down, he knew it was only going to be a handful of hours at most before his attention was once more required. Answering phone calls was almost a reflex now. His hand was moving before he was fully awake. Caruthers. Call from the FIC, sir. Put it through. The FIC was the Fleet Intelligence Center, housed on HMS Myrmidon, a team of dedicated and highly educated specialists whose job revolved around tending to the Watson systems and all those valuable flops. Their efforts had broken the alien encryption in short order, and they were now busily reading ET's mail. Thanks to them, Caruthers knew what his non-human counterparts' orders were, usually before they even finished reaching every officer in the alien fleet. There was a delay of a second or two as the line was transferred, which he spent levering himself upright and massaging his face for clarity. Chief, what's news? An interesting transmission from the planet to the fleet, sir. It looks like the SOR element were only partially successful. One of November Charlie's crew evaded capture. It looks like she was tracked down and told them about Kirk and Milwaukee Station. Now there's messages flying all over the ET's fleet about Article 12 of the Charter. Caruthers stood. Damn! Yes, sir. If they decide to attack Caledonia, they'll be doing it in about a half an hour, assuming they stick to their plan of using orbiting elements as cover. Thank you. Spread that intel. Well aware that he was a bit rumpled and unwashed from several solid days of being at work and snatching power naps in between, with only the odd meal at his desk, Caruthers would have preferred to grab a quick shower and a change of clothes, and he would have if there had been more than a half an hour in which to do so. As it was, well, he was far from the only one. The standoff in constant state of readiness was probably keeping everybody in the fleet in similar condition. Junior ranks got respectfully out of his way as he swarmed up the stairs to A-Deck and to the bridge, where Violent's CO, Commander Vaughn, was in the middle of taking the call from the Fleet Intel Center. Caruthers double-checked the volume chart, double-checking that everything was still where it should be. Vaughn put his phone down. Well, that's inconvenient, he noted. Shall we put a call into your opposite number, sir? Best not, Caruthers decided. It won't help us if we give away that we can listen to their communications. If they decide to hit Caledonia now... I think I've been more than patient enough with the fleet master, Caruthers declared. He turned to the communications officer. Give me a line to all the captains. Aye, aye, sir. It didn't take long. The FIC had the art of rapidly disseminating vital information down pat. Every commander they had was ready to receive orders. Bethany was on the line, too, looking most exhausted of all, but still dignified and fierce. Channel open, sir. Caruthers nodded his thanks, then addressed the camera on Vaughn's console. Gentlemen, I don't plan on waiting half an hour to see if they attack, because if they do, there won't be a damn thing we can do to stop them from destroying Caledonia, he announced without preamble. We're going to strike now. Violent, Viceroy, and Myrmidon will remain here with half the bulldogs. The rest of you will jump to beacon around the moon. We're going to blind them, nothing more. E-war and gravity spikes only until I say otherwise. Captain Daniels, you have authority for the strike group, just as we planned. Any questions? What about the Gowan ship? Captain Ruckley asked. Ruckley was the CEO of HMS Violent and one of the most vocally pro-alliance. They're to be spared unless they attack. Caruthers, letting his tone of voice carry the implicit order that there would be no flinching if it came to blows. We've entertained the possibility of contacting them and coming to some arrangement, but that's not practical right now. Hopefully their captain is smart enough to keep his claws in. Anybody else? What happens if they do succeed in attacking Caledonia? Then we nuke all the heavy pickets, Caruthers replied, including the flagship. If this goes tits up, then I at least want the galaxy to know for certain that we're no soft touch when it's killing time. Still, Batini, have your crew ready to abandon ship. Aye, sir. Anyone else? There was a round of general confirmation that they all understood their roles. Good hunting. Date point. 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 5 days AV. Planet Perfection. The Core Worlds. Zane. Zane had hit on the idea of using jumping stilts early on in his career as an info broker. At first, he'd considered duplicating Zhu's Gowan disguise, but had quickly given up on that idea. Quite aside from not speaking a lick of Gaori, his proportions were plainly and obviously wrong. He was far too tall, and too much of that height was legs. Besides, Chinasho had the more sinister reputation. Given that all he needed was an extra 12 inches or so in the leg to make himself roughly the right proportions, the rest had been first engineering and then adapting to the damn things. He'd fallen over a fair few times as he got used to them. Over the 3 years he'd spent on Perfection, he'd grown so used to his boots that taking them off in seclusion of a safe house started to feel wrong. But they'd saved his life today. He called the contact. I want out, he told her, the instant she answered his call. I was about to cut you loose anyways. Your usual flair for subtlety seems to have abandoned you, the Courtier replied. I assume you'll be leaving us, making use of that ship you have stored away, Little noodly gray bitch had always been far too sharp for Zane's tastes. It might have been her influence that saw him rescued from Aru, but that didn't mean he had to like her. Especially not when she so thoroughly punctured his illusions that he'd been able to keep the creation stepper a secret. I'm not stupid enough to stay here, he shot back. Stupid enough to out yourself and kill 3 police officers. What were you thinking? Don't give me the evil eye, Zane told her. Being caught was a when, not an if. Was it really necessary to kill them? Hard to not, Zane retorted. And it kill or be killed, you know. Oh yes, I know. They'll kill you if they catch you, undoubtedly. They aren't necessarily wrong either, if the hunters get wind of your presence. Zane's normally limited and currently negligible patience ran out. And I ain't done talking, he snapped. Or am I going to have to listen till the end of the earth? I have cleared your debt. You're free to go, Dredd. A pity. You've been a rare and valuable asset. I wish you all the best. Yeah, I'd wish I good luck, but I doesn't need it, not true? Zane didn't often compliment anybody, but then again, he didn't like very many people. The contact was a rare exception. She'd always treated him with respect and fairness. True. Farewell, Dredd. Yeah. Live long and prosper and thing. He ended the call. Inventory check. He had his clothing, his jumping stilts, several 100,000 Dominion currency credits spread across 5 different fake identities, and a small spaceship rigged for going from point A to point B as quickly as possible. He also had being a human. Awkward as it might be to constantly disguise that fact, being able to outthink everything in the galaxy, outrun them, or if need be, tear them limb from limb, was not a blessing to be sneered at. He'd be fine. Date point. 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 5 days AV. Heavy System Picket Utopian Aspiration. Perfection System, the Core Worlds. Fleet Master.
Zirkon-tic-tic. Octenver-tic-tic.
The orbital element will be in position in 200 Re, Fleet Master.
Good. Remember, the human retaliation will be immediate. Every ship is to warp to safety instantly upon the target's destruction.
Zik took a last look at the fleet disposition and satisfied himself that the Deathworlders were about to get a nasty shock. Considering just how much death and mayhem they had caused in their short time on the interstellar stage, he didn't feel even the slightest twinge of... More than half of the human fleet vanished. All they left on the field were 3 of their larger ships. 12 of the small, probably drones, and the damaged... The tactical display made an alarmed noise, and its happy blue abruptly turned green. Warning icons indicated a sudden and total shutdown in the available sensor telemetry from his own ship. Before he could give any order, it went yellow, indicating that it was non-functional. The Utopian aspiration was no longer receiving any sensor telemetry. His view of the human fleet and the battle space dissolved into useless fuzz. Every officer he could see started prodding and swiping uselessly at their workstations, attempting to salvage the situation.
What just happened?
He demanded, raising his voice to cut through the sudden hubbub.
Comms are down, sensors are down, station keeping is down, navigation is down.
Superluminal comms?
Zik called.
Active, but... Fleetmaster, every ship is reporting identical failures.
Zik rounded on the tactical technicians.
Sensors. The diagnostics say they've burned out, Fleetmaster.
The technician gave him a wide-eyed panicked look.
All of them at once. It seems the humans hit them with extremely high-energy beams of radiation in their most sensitive bands, exceeding their... They shot us?
Zik snapped.
Yes, Fleetmaster.
Zik turned to Meffer.
They shot us. Those cowardly, honorless, treacherous dirt chewers shot us.
They beat us to it,
Meffer observed. Zik ground his teeth and seriously considered removing the Quartai from her post, but she had not, in fact, been overtly insubordinate. Instead, he reined in his temper.
The other elements?
He asked. The tactical officer swiped desperately through his volumetric display elements.
Third group reporting identical system failures,
he called.
Second group are still at warp. They're unscathed and requesting orders.
Zik's hand stabbed into his command display and selected the only icon that had a known position and condition. HMS Caledonia.
Destroy that ship,
he snarled. Date point. 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 5 days AV. HMS Violent. Perfection System. The Core Worlds. Commodore William Caruthers.
Their FT element is coming about.
Myrmidon to predict their invector and spike it. Valiant to warp 4 of their bulldogs to Caledonia and seed white noise. Mr. Morgan, put your bulldogs amongst those spikes.
Aye, aye.
The Watson systems and the decade of GUI research and development that had begun the moment people got their heads around the idea that interstellar flight and conflict were likely to feature in humanity's near future were proving their worth yet again. The Royal Navy prided itself on its traditions and on not fixing what wasn't broken. But there was no command tradition or ship's controls that were built to handle engagements across distances so vast that the speed of light was inconveniently too slow. The system had therefore been purpose-built, and it worked beautifully. The computers listened, interpreted, shared, transmitted, prepared. All a human needed to do was confirm their analysis, and not only did Caruthers' orders immediately reach their intended recipients, but the computers on those ships had already prepared firing solutions and plotted accelerations. They also kept Caruthers appraised of the progress of his commands. He had ordered for Myrmidon to fire gravity spikes, and so now, as each step in the process of reloading and firing that specialist ammunition filtered through Myrmidon's own chain of command, Caruthers could watch it. The orders were received, acknowledged, carried out. There was an agonizing wait of some few seconds as their gun crews swapped ammo feeds. No sooner was that step completed than Myrmidon fired. On the Commodore's screen, overlapping red bubbles filled the predicted incoming fleet's approach vector, saturating several thousand cubic kilometers with no warp zones. Caruthers watched the icons representing the fleet hawkishly, expecting them to detect the impediment in their way and abort their approach in favor of a different angle. They didn't, which was excellent evidence for their E-War's assault on the alien command element having completely blinded them. The Bulldogs synchronized with the control systems aboard Myrmidon and pulse-warped into the midst of that field of gravity spikes. By far, the slowest step had been reloading the guns, and the result was that when, 2 minutes later, the last undamaged elements of the fleet arrived, rather than pouncing on helpless targets and annihilating it, they were instead brought crashing back down to sublight speeds, and before they could get their bearings, they were pounced upon and rendered helpless. Caruthers watched with a grim expression as the last alien ship lost attitude control and came adrift.
"Hail the fleet, master," he ordered.
Date point. 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 5 days AV. Heavy System Picket, Utopian Aspiration, Perfection System, the Core Worlds. Fleetmaster,
Fleetmaster, the human wishes to talk.
Wishes to gloat,
Zik grumbled. He stood and shook out his mane.
Very well. Relay this conversation to the fleet and to the system. I want them to see what kind of monsters these Deathworlders are.
Yes, Fleet Master. On screen.
Zik scrutinized his foe as the human's visage appeared on the large screen. Was gray hair a sign of age in humans? They all looked so lumped and solid that it was hard to guess whether this Caruthers was slender or stocky by his species standards. The human seemed to have sprouted a rough blueness of hair stubble along his jaw and around his mouth since Zik had last spoken with him, and the skin under his eyes was darker. An emote of some kind? Or just a symptom of stress and fatigue?
What do you want?
Zik demanded.
My apologies for striking first. I suppose I lost my nerve, the human replied. I have left you with...
He checked something outside the camera's field of view.
Yes, with one ship that has full sensors. Be sensible and use it to guide the others to anchor.
Toying with a still predator?
Zik sneered. He checked the status of every ship in his fleet and immediately found the only blue icon. The Racing Thunder. Of course, the Gowans. The furry traders must have been feeding intelligence to the humans. It was the only way that Caruthers could have known to attack first.
If you're waiting for a coup de grace, Fleet Master, I won't be delivering one, Caruthers replied. We are not your enemy. It's unfortunate that we have come to blows over this, but we have gone out of our way to avoid casualties. I would hope that gesture counts in our favor.
You have made an enemy,
Zik spat,
and your Gowan conspirators will be put on trial for their treason.
Now, I can't allow that, Caruthers said. Their ship is intact because the clans of Gao have been welcoming and civilized towards our people, which is a kindness I won't betray. They're innocent of any treason.
I see through your lie,
Zik snapped.
They're your agents, and I'll have them shaved and executed for their treachery.
Around the bridge, several subordinates stared at him in alarm. Caruthers' expression hardened.
A word of advice, Fleet Master, from commander to commander. Give the victories to your men, and take the defeats for yourself.
He glanced aside, listening to something that Zik couldn't hear, then smiled and made no effort to cover his teeth. Several of Zik's officers flinched.
And don't threaten the one crew in your fleet whose ship can still go to warp, he added.
Zik rounded on the comms officer, who sent him a text update. The Racing Thunder had indeed disconnected from the tactical network and had shot out of the system at 100 kilolights, headed directly for Gao.
We are blinded and adrift,
he shot at the humans.
Article 3
requires me to leave you adequate means to return to harbor.
Yes, Caruthers interrupted.
I did. We'll repair our ship now and depart. How you get home is no longer my problem. Goodbye.
The transmission ended. Zik was standing in the middle of the bridge, stamping his hind legs angrily. A gesture of frustrated rage entirely analogous to a human pacing and clenching their fists when the comms officer found the courage to speak.
A message for you from Planetary Director Luz, Fleet Master,
he gestured quietly. Zik glanced around the bridge. Nobody met his eye. Without a word, he turned towards the wardroom and went to take the call that would end his career. Date point: 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 5 days AV. HMS Violent. Perfection Systems. The Core Worlds. Commodore William Caruthers. I get the impression that you enjoyed that, sir. Caruthers sat back, removed his hat, and ran a hand through his hair before tucking it neatly back into place. The full weight of several days of inadequate sleep was now resting on him, and he really wasn't in the mood for gloating.
The Gowans, he asked.
Departing at best speed, with thanks.
Acknowledge their thanks and inform them that they may seek refuge at Cimbrian if they need it, Caruthers instructed.
Aye, aye, sir. Caruthers opened the channel to Caledonia. When he answered it, Captain Behnke was back under his flash hood again.
You can relax, Captain, Caruthers told him. Our ET opposite numbers are neutralized for now. That's fantastic news, sir, Behnke nodded. My reactor chief thinks we should be able to fire up main power in 12 hours.
Caruthers tutted.
Nearly got out of this without a fight, he mused. Oh well, that's still well ahead of the estimate. Chief Andau believes in giving pessimistic estimates, Behnke replied.
Caruthers chuckled tiredly.
Good for him. I'll hear from you in 8 hours then, shall I?
Behnke laughed with him.
I believe you will, sir. Yes.
Caruthers gave him a thumbs up and closed the call. He was rubbing at his forehead and composing his log when the most welcome scent in the universe wafted across his workstation, and a voice asked, "Coffee, sir?" Caruthers gave the midshipman who was offering him the mug, black, sugary, and double strong, exactly as he liked it, the grateful smile that only a half-dead man being given coffee could produce, and accepted it. "Very much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Faulkner." He sipped half of it while he recorded his log entries, then finished by swigging the remainder. A quick survey and check-in with the fleet satisfied him that they could step down enough for him to grab another power nap. Somewhere in the future beyond that, however, was the siren promise of a full night's sleep, and right now that sounded positively decadent. But there were at least another 8 hours of hard work and stress before then. He stood, left the flotilla in the capable hands of Captain Manning, and returned to his cabin. Date point: 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 6 days AV. Heavy system picket utopian aspiration. Perfection systems. The core worlds. 53. The bridge had been a subdued hubbub ever since the fleet master had trudged off as if he was walking to his own execution. 53 had taken the opportunity to restore some order and had demanded a compilation of every sensor log they had of the human attack. The data was depressingly sparse. Strobing beams of EM radiation, each perfectly tuned to their sensors' points of most sensitivity, had lashed their fleet, with each of the human ships generating thousands of such beams. All of the sensors had been overwhelmed and blinded, orders of magnitude too quickly for the reaction times of any organic life form. 53 had little more to go on than the precise time that each ship's sensors had burned out. It really wasn't much, and certainly exceeded her ability to think of countermeasures. No matter, the hierarchy was only the front line of a grand defense, and 53 predicted that even these meager crumbs of data would admit of something that could be used. The humans would not hold their advantage for long. The bridge went quiet. Fleetmaster Zick emerged from the wardroom, looking old, frail, and devastated.
"Shipmaster Meffer,"
he announced quietly. His voice was barely more than a croak, but the silence carried it clearly to every ear in the room.
"By the order of Protection Planetary Governor Luz, it is my final duty as master of this fleet to appoint you as my replacement. All command codes and privileges are now transferred to you. The security of this system and its people is now your responsibility and duty if you accept it."
53 straightened. This was not ideal. Hierarchy doctrine called for their agents to remain in well-placed, subordinate positions rather than in command. Unfortunately, she was not able to refuse, and Meffer was too valuable a host to sacrifice on doctrine. "I accept that responsibility and relieve you of it," she declared, formally and carefully. There was a cascade of alerts and updates in her implants as the command codes were transferred. "All ships are to prioritize repair of their navigational sensors," she said. "We only need one to get us home." The order was acknowledged and followed, while a pair of Visitic Marines led the former fleetmaster off the bridge.
"If one of the ships repairs their targeting sensors, shall we destroy the human ship?"
one of the crew asked. 53 considered her options, weighing her responsibilities to the hierarchy's secrecy, to its mission, and to the options appropriate for completing that mission. "No," she declared. Out loud, she gave a convincing reason that would do for the meat-spaced life forms. "The retaliation would not be so restrained as they have been so far, and I have no doubt the hunters would relish the opportunity to degrade this system with the defense fleet weakened." Internally, the logic was much more complicatedly political. This incident would certainly have cost the humans much of the goodwill they'd earned at Capital Station. But to really twist the knife? 53. Message for 20. I have a request. As for the humans, even if they did have a nanofactory now, that would almost certainly work out in the hierarchy's favor. Every previous occasion where a species had gotten their hands on that technology prematurely had resulted in massive recession and strife. Given that the hierarchy's analysis was that most of the so-called allied nations were already accumulating immense debt as they pumped finances into developing their fledgling spaceport military and the Cimbrian colonization effort, the hierarchy would be quite happy to sit back and let another massive stress land on the human economy. She settled in the fleetmaster's chair moments before the reply reached her. 20. A request? 20 was their infiltrator amongst the hunters, posing as a lowly Omega communications officer. It was a perfect position, overlooked, unsuspected, and able to feed whatever morsels of intelligence the hierarchy wanted directly to the Alphas, who made the real decisions. The rest was down to hunter psychology, such as it was. 53. Perfection is currently without a system defense fleet, thanks to the humans. 20. Destroyed. 53. Better. Intact but crippled. Lots of meat for the maw. 20. Please, don't use that hideous phrase. I receive it dozens of times a day as it is. 53. Apologies. Can you arrange a hunt? 20. Easily, and I shall. Done. 53 carefully kept her satisfaction from showing. She was simultaneously about to finally demolish the Dominion's goodwill toward Deathworlders and resolve the problem of her own unwelcome rank. It would be trivially simple to arrange her host to meet an untimely end between a hunter's teeth. 53. That's simple. 20. The Alpha of Alphas has been looking for an opportunity to deploy some reverse-engineered human technology. Trust me, the attack will come very soon indeed. Good work. 53. Thank you. 20 did not acknowledge the thanks, not that 53 was inclined to care. She could smell the promotion in her near future. Date point: 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 6 days AV. HMS Caledonia, Perfection Systems, the Core Worlds. Chief Michael Andau. Okay, final checklist. Combustion chamber pressure? 10 to the minus 7 millibar, Chief, Patel reported. Emergency breakers? Evans double-checked them. Engage, Chief. Ignition lasers? Charge, Chief. Deuterium? Pump prime, Chief. 2,000 kilograms in the tank. ESCC field? Online, Chief. Sphincters? There was a round of laughter. Evans spoke up. Clenched, Chief. Andau flashed a one-sided grin at the younger man and called the bridge. Captain, he said, reactor room. We're ready for ignition, sir. Excellent news. Wake her up, Chief. Aye, aye, sir. Andau patted Callie's hull affectionately. All right, girl. Let's get you home, eh? Amen, somebody muttered. All right, Hooky, Andau gestured to Patel. Do the honors. She nodded, took a deep breath, popped the cover on the fusion reactor's main ignition, and thumbed the huge red button thus revealed. It made an alarming sound. Nobody flinched. It was exactly what they'd hoped to hear. Stage 1 ignition complete and burning. Increasing deuterium flow. Stable. Reaction temperature ready and steady at 11 million Kelvin. That's our girl, Andau grinned. The generator array was reporting nothing but green across the board as the force fields deep within it simultaneously compressed, contained, and enabled the fusion reaction and bled off the surplus energy for electricity. It wasn't quite perfect. Andau had cut his teeth on gas turbine engines and supercritical water generators. He missed hearing the muffled howl of a turbine next to which the fusion plants were disappointingly quiet. There was a steady low hum, almost inaudibly faint, but it just wasn't the same. It just didn't sound like a gigawatt. He stabbed the shipwide intercom. All hands prepare for a change in gravity, he announced, and hooted the alarm for good measure. He turned to Evans. Slow adjust to 1G. Aye, aye, Chief. The sensation of gravity weighing down on them picked up. They'd become so used to 1/4 gravity over the last few days that it took a second or two to adjust to the natural weight of their bodies. Evans hissed as the shift dragged his wounded arm heavily downwards in its sling. LR? I'm fine, Chief, Evans professed. Nearly home, Andau promised. How's the jump drive, Hooky? Patel gave me a huge, bright smile as she checked it. Powered and ready to jump, Chief. We're above the yellow line. Andau snatched a fist in front of his chest in celebration and contacted the bridge. Sir, we're ready to jump. Many thanks, came the terse reply. The situation on the bridge had to be just as tense and nervous as down in the reactor room. After all, they weren't home yet. Moments later, the alarm sounded for a jump. All across the ship, hatches were sealed, firefighting equipment prepared, and crew braced in case of another fire or power failure. There wasn't one. Instead, Caledonia shunted several megajoules into her jump engine, leapt through space in a direction other than up, and went home. Date point: 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 7 days AV. Starship Negotiable Curiosity, Deep Space. Wilson Titan Akiyama. Being SOR meant being on good speaking terms with pain. In fact, it meant having something that verged on being a friendship with pain. Pain was how they knew they were getting stronger. Pain told them where their limits were, so that they could push them back, and back, and back. If you weren't in pain, you weren't improving. That thought was becoming a mantra for Titan. His abdominal muscles had already cramped up and spasmed a couple of times now, as the unrelenting pressure of his EV mass forced him to push back. His limbs were tired, just from the simple fact of having spent days living and moving around in a suit that weighed the best part of 150 pounds, even stripped down to the bare minimum as it currently was. Even his mind hurt. A man could function on regular power naps, but there was no substitute for a solid night's sleep. Preferably nude. Nothing heavier than his sheets. Maybe not even those. Maybe a shower first, if he could hold it together that long. The suit had all the necessary pelvic plumbing to be worn for days, but that didn't mean it was hygienic. In fact, Titan was feeling filthy, itchy, and disgusting. He knew that there was no detectable scent coming off him yet, but also knew that the moment the seal on his suit was popped, the accumulated BO would bleach hair. And there were still 2 days to go. He had to face it. It was time to use another crew de-injector. He'd held out long enough. His buddies weren't faring any better, though Rebar was suffering the worst. The huge burst of energy he'd expended chasing the escaped wormwork through the marketplace had left him with a deficit he'd never quite caught up on. He did his part just fine, keeping an eye on the ETs between sleep shifts, but that was all he did. Watch, eat, and sleep. His eyes were a long way away, staring blankly at nothing and leaving his thoughts opaque. Akiyama knew how to help, though, and the burst of energy and vitality he was going to get from his next crude shot would be of value. That fact made him feel better about finally giving in and injecting it 20 minutes before Blazinski was due to relieve him at the pilot station. That was plenty of time for it to work. They shared a weary greeting and hug as they traded places, and Titan headed back to the ship's common area, feeling much better now. He was going to need a lot of recuperation, but for now the pain subsided. His muscles regained some of their spent strength, and he felt more alert and focused. He sat next to Rebar and put an arm around the big guy's back. "Ow," he commented. Rebar's voice was just a little more than a rumble, way down in the contrabass territory. "Yeah." "How are you doing for—" Titan glanced at Bedu's doorway. The Kortai was still sitting there, as seemed to be his habit for the flight. "Doses." "2 left," Rebar grunted. He looked ashenly haggard, almost old. Despite the youthfulness that crude use returned to everybody, there were deep lines in his brow and around his eyes and mouth. "Gonna pop one tomorrow, and one for when we're landing." "Bro, don't even worry about it. You know Horse and Base will want to carry you off this thing if you need it." "You always got to be the logical one, huh?" Rebar groused. "Shit, bro. Take my fucking sleep shift, too. You need more than 2 hours. Ordinarily, Rebar would have refused. This time, his expression was relieved and hopeful, but he still asked, "You sure?" "Papados and get some real sleep in, man." Rebar nodded. He slipped open the blue-green Crew-D pouch on his belt, pulled out one of the injectors, then leaned forward and injected himself through the little port in his suit's flank. It wasn't surprising at all when he slouched back into the wall and rested his head against Titan's arm. "Still pissed that fucking Kurambura got away," he grumbled. Beto had been sitting, as he habitually did, in the doorway of his cabin and watching them. Now he spoke up. "Moromorak was always an intelligent one," he commented, "and resourceful. She was a pleasure to work with." "Gotta give her," Rebar yawned, "points for tenacity." "Dude, sleep," Titan told him. He needn't have bothered. Rebar was already oblivious. I don't know which is more terrifying, those suits, or the fact that the four of you have only just begun to show real signs of fatigue and discomfort, Bedu observed.
Can't really discuss them, man. Sorry,
Akiyama told him. You don't need to. I am Kortai, Titan. We can deduce much by observation. I know beyond a doubt that you're using a Cruzier-based medicine of some kind. The suit contains no powered components and does not seem to be at all loose on you, and you all dent the floor just by walking around. Titan shrugged for him, conscientiously refraining from any comment. There was no point denying the Cruzier observation, but he wasn't about to confirm it either. May I ask you a question? Bedu asked.
Sure.
Are you doing this voluntarily?
Absolutely,
Titan nodded. You are clearly in severe pain. You are exhausted, incomprehensibly far from home. Cruzier use has deviated your body far from the human baseline, and you have placed yourself in harm's way for the lives of species other than your own. Voluntarily.
That's right. Hell, they tried to talk us out of it.
Bedu's brow arched upwards. Titan didn't know if that was a native Kortai gesture or if one he was imitating. You were dissuaded?
Oh yeah, time and time again. The highway to become SOR is designed to persuade you to quit and go do something easier.
One would argue something more sane, Bedu commented.
One would argue, Titan chuckled, nodding. But here I am.
In pain. Titan laughed at that. Rebar grumbled something and stretched out on the floor instead of against him. Bedu just blinked. Something is amusing? He asked. Titan stood up and stretched. He may as well make use of the crew D in his system now to recover some flexibility with some extremely light exercise.
What's funny is I was thinking about pain earlier, he said. I think maybe we have a different attitude to it than you do. What do you do with pain? What's your, how do you deal with it?
I avoid it, Bedu said. If the translator was getting his tone of voice right, the judgment implicit in his tone was that this should be the obvious and sane behavior of any creature. Don't you?
Pain's a good friend, Titan told him. And there's not just the one kind. There's the pain that says, push harder and you will damage yourself. And another that says, you are damaging yourself. And another that says, when something else has damaged you. They're all there to warn you, but that's all they're for.
And you ignore that warning, Bedu sounded unconvinced.
Because it's too obvious for the modern world. Maybe way back when we were sharpening sticks and living in caves, our pain thresholds were in the right place, but now that we've got...
Titan caught himself before he mentioned the Cruzier. Modern medicine and surgery and stuff. And Cruzier, Bedu needled.
Whatever. The point is, we can push on through. We call it mind over matter, willpower, and... He smiled, figuring out the most Kortai way to say it. Logic overriding more base urges.
Bedu inclined his head thoughtfully. A strange intellectual sentiment coming from somebody so physically robust. Titan shrugged.
Bedu, I mean no offense, he said, but the gravest mistake your species ever made was thinking that the two can't coexist. For us, mind and body are the same thing, healthy in one, healthy in the other. That may be true for you, but give me one logical reason why it couldn't be true for the Kortai as well, Titan interrupted him.
Bedu scowled thoughtfully, so he drove the point home.
There isn't one. There's no good reason at all why your kind couldn't have what we have.
Bedu gestured oddly, a kind of rapid twitching of his head, as if he was trying to shake something out of his ear. Kortai, as strong as Deathworlders? He asked. What an absurd mental image. Why? I must admit you are right. Just by standing here and talking to me, you prove that there's no good reason for brains and brawn not to coexist in one species.
Just a thought, Titan shrugged. In the words of my people, you do you.
Is that a Japanese saying? Rebar asked sleepily.
I'm American, you racist fuck, Titan told him, grinning fondly. Go to sleep.
Rebar grunted and rolled over. The odds were that there was too much pain for now to truly rest, but the crew would soon solve that. Akiyama turned his attention back to Bedu. So, yeah, you do you. he repeated. And become like you, if we wish. Why not? Beta rubbed a finger against one of his long, pointed ears, thoughtfully. Why not indeed, he mused. Date point. 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 7 days AV. HMS Charmin. HMNB Folktha, Cimbrian. The Far Reaches. Martina Kovac. Joder! Nice to see you too, Warhorse. Sergeant Otis stepped up the ramp and into the shuttle. Martina was the only one aboard it. Only the SOR were offloading at Cimbrian, and as the only injury amongst them, she had been shuttled down early for medical reasons. Shit on Jesus, he said. When they called down from Cali and said I had a burn patient to look after, they didn't say it was you. Are you okay? Kovac feigned nonchalance. Oh, just painful blistering burns. Well, shit, let's get you out of here. She took his hand and heaved herself upright on it. He couldn't have offered her better support if he'd been an iron bar bolted to the floor and ceiling. There was another rip of stinging pain up her back, and she gritted her teeth. Crew patch? Horse offered, hovering nearby as she staggered down the ramp, internally cussing herself out for just how stiff and immobile her back had become. She had to hold herself like she was tied to a board if she didn't want it to hurt. She hadn't appreciated just how involved her back was in walking until she couldn't use it anymore. Bit late, Martina pointed out. The window's long gone. You're still healing. It'll do something for you, Otis promised. Martina rolled up her sleeve for him, and he pressed the patch firmly to the soft skin on the underside of her forearm, where it started to dissolve and sink in. The process stung a little, but it was nothing next to what she'd been enduring for the last few days. There you go. You'll have a lot of, dead skin back there after the crew's done its bit. Gonna need to exfoliate. They started across the flight line toward the barracks, and Martina tried to put up with the repeated needle stabs her gait sent spearing into her. You mean part of my recovery is going to be a spa day? She asked, taking refuge in humor to cover her discomfort. Oh no, how will I cope? Don't celebrate just yet, smartass, Horace told her, grinning. You're going to need deep tissue massage therapy as well. What next in the parade of calamities? From me. That brought Martina back down. You. I'm not talking about some relaxation Reiki stones chakra alignment bullshit here. Your connective tissue is going to need stretching out good if you're going to heal up without losing flexibility. That's where I come in. Only you could make a massage sound like torture. It, kind of will be. Sorry. So what? You've got to massage the whole affected area? Martina asked. Yep. 'Cause, I burned my butt. His face shut down. Well, he began, then cleared his throat. I mean, we can, sort out a, chaperone if you, There was the trademark Aries blush. Warhorse got a couple of shades darker and ruddier when he was feeling awkward, especially around the ears and forehead. It was adorable, which was not a word that Martina had ever guessed she'd associate with a guy who outmassed her several times over and could bench press small cars. The annoying part was that she knew her own nose and cheeks had gone red, and given how much fairer skinned she was than him, there was no way the effect was subtle. Not for a couple of... You got to heal up a bit more first, he continued, and cleared his throat again. Probably, I've not actually, inspected the wound. They stood on the asphalt for a second or two in mutual silence, considering the near future. This is going to be weird, isn't it? She predicted. Dude, you measure my dick once a month. Still going to be weird. Yep. Date point. 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 7 days AV. HMS Violent. Cimbrian System. The Far Reaches. Commodore William Caruthers. The phone rang. Caruthers permitted himself the luxury of grumbling about it before answering. Oh no. Come on. This had been the first time in several days that he'd gone to bed anticipating a solid 6 or more hours. Glancing at the red numbers of his alarm clock, he saw that he'd had barely 2.5. He answered the phone. It felt lead-heavy. Caruthers. The report he received woke him up like a sobering sluice of ice water. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am the Casual Deathworlder, your host, and this has been the conclusion of The Deathworlders, Chapter 27. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to feed the algorithm. Just don't hand feed it. It bites. And while you're getting all that down, please smash those like and subscribe buttons and consider dropping a comment down below for engagement purposes. And as always, share. Okay, once again, a huge shout out to my editor Gregor. Thank you very much, buddy. You're half the magic here. And one more shout out to all the new subscribers. Welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to check for the link in the channel for our Discord community. Come and join us over there. Lots of fun going on. And until next time, be safe, be well. I love you all. Bye-bye. Okay, Gregor, it is time once again to do the thing. Because, well, if not me, then whom? If not now, then when? All right, let us begin, shall we? A nearby Governor Ragavendrigan.
Hambone, curse you!